Hi, Facebook. Greetings from another late night in session. It's Thursday night. Maybe, hopefully, most of you are tucked in or getting ready to go to bed, but it's about 10 o'clock on a Thursday night, and we just got out of our last session of the week. And just to review, that's to be in session means that we are meeting as a full house. I believe 4 days this week. 3 days this week. And then I had committee meetings the other two. So it's late, and I'm going to try to run through essentially what we've been doing this week and some of the important bills that we did move through. As I said, the week was dominated by being in session, and a lot of that is sometimes it's long debates, sometimes things move quickly, lots of conversations going on between legislators on the floor as we're all trying to advocate for bills that we're and policies that we're interested in. And also meetings of various committees are happening just outside the chamber, so lots of action as we try to move things through and get close to the end of session, which is on June 5th. So, and also what's happening in between, we will vote on bills in session, and then sometimes there will be a recess or a pause, and both parties will go into caucus, and which means that we'll go to our respective meeting rooms and go through in a really open and confidential way how we feel about the big issues that are ahead of us. And those caucus conversations this week have been dominated by issues like tolls. We've been looking at a lot of data on tolls, and there's a lot of what I learned this week on the toll question in particular is that this issue's been, as some of you may know, has been debated by the legislature for several years. But in the past, it's been really light on detail, and that's been a real frustration for a lot of people. And this time around, there is a lot more detail, and there will be even more detail by the time the bill is released and we get to take a look at it and make a final decision. As I have said throughout the campaign, I am open to tolls because I don't think saying no to tolls all by itself is really a responsible answer. There is wide bipartisan agreement that the state of our roads and infrastructure is dire and poses a threat not only to our economy but to public safety, and that we need a significant investment in our infrastructure. And so the question is, how do you pay for it? Do you set up tolls, which would have 40% of the cost being paid by drivers from neighboring states? Or do you borrow the money, which is the proposal put out by, it's the only competing proposal, essentially, which would mean that our kids have to pay the full cost. And it also means that we forego all kinds of other things that we in our towns use the state's bonding structure for, all kinds of state projects that would not happen if we have to bond for our infrastructure. So I'm still very interested in the details. It matters to me what kind of discounts are going to be offered to Connecticut drivers, and what kind of my understanding that we're going to, not only will Connecticut in-state drivers get a discount, but there will be discounts for people who are frequent users and hit the toll gantries with frequency, and also an income threshold for low-income users. But I look forward to the details. The details matter, and I thank all of you who have reached out to me on that issue. I've really had a variety of really substantive conversations about tolls with many of you, and I appreciate that thought. So those have been some of the conversations, some of the bills that we moved through. We passed a wind energy bill this week to help Connecticut be a real center for wind energy off New London, which I think is a really good move forward for clean energy and also for Connecticut's economy. I think it's a good job creator for us. We also passed a bill this week to raise the age of purchase of tobacco and tobacco-related products. That includes traditional cigarettes and vaping products, tobacco-related, from 18 to 21 for all kinds of health reasons. I think we all know, anybody who spent time in the substance abuse community, one of the things that you learn is that the longer you can delay first use of all kinds of addictive substances, that includes alcohol and tobacco, the better off you are, and the more likely you are to become addicted in your life. And so I think it's a really positive health outcome that we were able to take that and move it from 18 to 21. One side note to that, we had a lot of conversation as to whether we were going to ban, candy flavor and fruit flavored vaping substances that do have a tendency to appeal to kids. We weren't able to do that in part because there was a pretty strong pushback from a lot of people, adults, who have been able to either reduce or quit smoking traditional cigarettes because of those flavors, and I heard from a lot of people who really, for whom that was a big help, and so that was a harder issue, and we reached a compromise that to focus just on raising the age to 21. So that was a good bill. Today we passed a bill relating to pregnancy centers, and this was also a difficult bill because some people felt it's emotional. It does relate to abortion, and essentially what this bill was targeted at was a number of limited service pregnancy centers that many of whom are faith-based, and many of whom do incredible work and provide important counseling to women facing unplanned pregnancies. But some of those centers, particularly one very documented case in Hartford, have been advertising falsely that they provide abortion services when they do not. And that is a real problem for somebody who is dealing with an unplanned pregnancy and looks online for a health center that can talk to her about what her options are, finds a place that, looking for an abortion, are you pregnant? Come to such and such a, place. And then they come and they meet with somebody in a white coat with a stethoscope and they fill out a form and it feels like a health center when it is not. And that's not, particularly at a situation which is very time sensitive, and the more delay, the less safe a procedure becomes, and the more costly it becomes. So we did pass a law today that would prevent false advertising. It's not aimed at anybody who's doing faith-based counseling in a straightforward way, which many of them are. It's aimed only at centers which claim to be providing or imply that they're providing certain services that they are not. So we hope that'll provide a clearer service for everyone. We also passed a bill today that would study ranked choice voting. I have had a lot of conversations with people about ranked choice voting, and to define what that is in this case, imagine a scenario where you have three candidates for office, and in the first round of voting, one gets 40%, another gets 40%, and the third gets 20%. What would happen in that case is that if you had ranked choice, if this were just a straight up election, say one had 41%, one had 39%, and one had 20%. Candidate A, who had 41%, would win, but that's not a majority of the vote. That's so if you had ranked choice voting and people wanted candidate A first, candidate B second, candidate C third, and in the first round nobody gets more than 50% of the vote, the candidate with the least votes would drop out, and their votes, the least votes for in first place. Can you tell I've been here for too long? I'm not speaking very clearly. So the candidate who got the least number of votes drops out, and everybody who voted for that candidate, their votes go to their second place person, and so those votes get redistributed to candidate A and B in this, and so you do that until somebody wins a majority of the vote. It's an interesting proposition. It creates some issues that have to be thought through all the way. It's not necessarily a good idea, but it's a thoughtful. It's something we ought to think about, and that was. I'd say that was people on both sides of the aisle. It wasn't necessarily a partisan vote. There were people on both sides that supported it and people on both sides who didn't. So, it was an interesting vote. One final issue that I just want to mention that I have been hearing from a lot of you about, has to do with in the governor's budget, he proposed shifting a certain amount of the teachers' pension responsibilities onto municipalities, 25%. And more than that, if you happen to be, if certain municipalities pay their teachers in excess of the state average, and in those instances, those municipalities would have to pay more than 25%, and in other municipalities that have of other economic realities can pay less. That was not in the budget that I voted for in appropriations in round one of the budget process, and I'm very glad it wasn't, because I am not convinced that is a good way for us to work out our budget. That to me is just moving an obligation from the state to the municipalities, which then probably forces those towns to raise property tax, and that's a terrible way for us to raise revenue. And so it does. If you don't do it, there are other realities that will also be hard, because we'll have to figure out how to pay for that. But I and many others around here are pretty strong supporters of not shifting that, and so I'm certainly having lots of conversations on that, but it's still very much an open topic. Let's see, I think that's about it for the moment. Tomorrow I'm back here for appropriations, where we're dealing with more bills that have been referred to us. And then actually I'm leaving to go to my daughter's college graduation. My oldest is graduating from college this weekend, so that's kind of exciting. It's a first for me. And I'm looking forward to that. But imagine I'll be taking I'm now going to pack up my homework to take with me for the plane. So have a great weekend, everyone, and talk to you next week. Bye.